In this video, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the MTG Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set. Normally, I make videos where I break down the limited format to help you prepare for your events, and I already have my draft guide made for this set if you want to check that out. But I also frequently get asked for my personal opinions on a set and whether it looks good to me. That's what I'll be covering in this video, my honest thoughts and opinions. As I get started, the first thing I want to say is that I love Magic and I want it to succeed. I'm someone who likes to focus on the positives and be constructive in my criticisms. I don't think being negative is very helpful, and I like to conduct myself sharing an opinion in a video the same way I would conduct myself if I was giving this feedback to someone who worked on the set in person, because I know all of the designers do their absolute best and love Magic just like I do. With that being said, I want to start with a positive about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set. I think it looks a lot better than Spider-Man. That's not the highest point of praise, since, to put it kindly, Spider-Man was not good, and to put it not so kindly, was quite bad. However, it's a question I've seen a lot, so I wanted to address it. As a first impression after examining the cards, I think the TMNT format seems pretty reasonably developed, with some cards that create interesting gameplay patterns by themselves, solid interactive spells, and some cool overlaps between the various strategies and mechanics. That being said, I still think it looks worse than an average set, and that some of the structural flaws of Spider-Man will carry over, which is particularly troubling because the MSRP for a play booster of TMNT is $7 instead of $5.50 for a set like Lorwyn Eclipsed. The price doesn't change to draft the format on MTG Arena, but I do think when you command a premium price in paper, you should deliver a premium experience, or at the very least an average one, and the very structure of the set has almost certainly made that an impossibility. What do I mean by that? Well, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles only has 190 cards in its main set for play boosters, a steep drop-off from the 268 cards in Lorwyn Eclipsed. This has rippling consequences that affect everything. Fewer cards means they have only chosen to support 5 archetypes in the set, which naturally leads to gameplay that is more samey, as there are fewer decks to pilot and fewer unique matchups to play. The smaller set also means there are only 10 commons in each color, compared to 13 in Lorwyn Eclipsed, and 8 uncommons in each color, compared to 16 in Lorwyn Eclipsed. And all these factors give me some concerns about replayability for people like myself who like to draft a set many times. If you're a newer player or a player who only plays each release a few times, fewer cards might actually make it easier to get a handle on things. If you're a player who likes to play each set a bunch of times on MTG Arena, I think less cards is a definite negative and can have severe consequences if even a couple cards turn out to be underpowered or overpowered because they come up more frequently. If they're underpowered, they can weaken an entire archetype, and if they're overpowered, they can have the potential to warp the format. I'll take a moment now to say that this issue is generally going to be one of replayability, rather than strictly poor gameplay. Pretty much every set is fun for the first few drafts, which I found to be true for Spider-Man, and is something I expect to be true for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles too. Though as I already mentioned, I think the fun for TMNT will last a bit longer than for Spider-Man. Replayability is naturally going to be smaller for a smaller set, because it just takes less time to explore everything in a smaller world, so it is almost unfair to judge it by the same standard as a set that has over 75 more cards. However, it becomes much more fair to hold it to the same standard when you realize that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles gets more time as the featured set than Lorwyn Eclipsed, 49 days from release to release compared to just 42. Given that it is almost an impossibility for the TMNT set to be more deep and complex than a format with 78 more cards, I find this to be a somewhat shocking strategical move. If you know a set is smaller, I can't imagine why you would do this to yourself, especially because I imagine designing all those extra cards took more man hours and you'd want to showcase your work for longer. The Avatar: The Last Airbender crossover set had 63 days to shine with its 281 cards, and giving Lorwyn Eclipsed 3 full weeks less just seems like a missed opportunity. Even if 63 days was something they determined to be too long, the cut to 42 is steep, especially when there was easily room to make TMNT the set with 42 days and give the extra week to Lorwyn Eclipsed instead. As a reference, they did a very similar thing with Spider-Man, giving its 193 cards a 56-day window, and the Edge of Eternity set just before it with 266 cards, the same 56-day window. It just seems like such an avoidable thing to do when they have the option to give a set with less replayability, less time in the spotlight, and then choose not to. I think decisions like this are one reason Magic players feel like Universes Beyond sets are being prioritized, because logically it doesn't make sense to do this. I can see why this makes players upset, because it feels like decisions like this care more about making an outside IP happy than they do about their own players. I know I'm going on and on about logistics, so I'll switch topics, but suffice to say, I think the scheduling could have been handled much better, and the way it was done is going to put much more scrutiny on TMNT than was necessary, since I think it has at least a week more in the limelight than it should. Moving back to more set specifics, I'm worried about the number of legendaries in the format. When so many creatures are legendary and there aren't as many options to begin with, it is frustrating that you are almost set up structurally to get wrecked by having a couple copies of the same legendary creature. I don't know if they could change the game rules so the legend rule doesn't apply to limited, but I don't think it makes a format better when you have to balance your decisions in a relatively small card pool by the fact that you have a couple legendary 2-drops and may lose a game because you draw 2 of them in the same game. This is especially true with legendaries at common, and I wish they wouldn't do it. It's almost forced upon the designers because the set needs the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and other characters who are named and are therefore legendary, but I think Magic players would be willing to suspend disbelief at 2 Raphaels in play in exchange for better gameplay, especially because you can still have 2 Raphaels in play if you have the common and uncommon versions, for example. I think that the benefit to all limited players of a change like this would outweigh the minor lore clash or niche commander applications. As I balance my criticism with positives, I want to take a moment to appreciate that Wizards did get the digital rights for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cards. It was a big criticism of Spider-Man for me that it felt like Wizards was sacrificing too much to do the collaboration, and at least in this case we don't have to worry about keeping track of digital versions and paper versions. It's hard to really call something a win though when every single Magic set in history has been able to do it successfully, and successfully without even knowing failure was a possibility. But I do think this is a reason I like the TMNT set a lot more than Spider-Man right off the bat, in addition to the superior design, so I wanted to give it a shout out. As I get ready to wrap this video up, I want to touch on theme. As a limited player, I understand that the thematic impact of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Universes Beyond in general is going to hit constructed players the hardest. As a limited player, I get to look at some wacky cards, cast some pizza spells, say cowabunga a couple times, and then move on to the next world. I'm not personally opposed to playing some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cards, because I watched it a little growing up, and of course I had a favorite turtle and everything. While I enjoy certain themes more or less than others, and they can certainly impact my enjoyment of a set, for example, one of the reasons playing Spider-Man wasn't as fun was the digital Spider-Man format was even less enjoyable. I recognize that for me, every set has a more fleeting impact than it does for the constructed enthusiast. For me, the set is only here for 49 days until Secrets of Strixhaven comes out. For a constructed player, they have to deal with the theme for 3 years if they're playing standard. And if they're playing an older format, they might have to deal with it forever. TMNT is undeniably jarring in the Magic universe, so I deeply empathize with this. There are players who say they don't care about the theme of the cards, or that they don't care about the setting, but there are most certainly players who do, and every set like this affects them a disproportionate amount. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I've done my best to be reasonable and fair and keep my criticisms constructive, so if you write a comment, I hope you will do the same. I'm still looking forward to exploring what this set has to offer, as I always enjoy a new challenge, and there are some cool cards and strategies to try, but I do think there are quite a few structural flaws that probably cap the set's potential. I hope you found my perspective helpful or interesting, or maybe both, and I'll talk to you next time.